What's up, guys? It has been a minute since I have spoken to you. I want to kind of go over some things and just kind of get in to what I'm doing right now, what I'm focused on, and how that aligns with the bigger picture. So, yeah. Um, so it's the first week of November. It's actually the 4th, uh, November the 4th, a Tuesday, and we're starting to pick up some speed. We're starting to really capitalize on the firewood market. So I believe, if my math is correct, over the last, well, there's going to be a 7 day period or so where we will have done $2,000. So, with that being said, if we can continue this trend, and if you include the week prior, which I will, because I think if we just want to go ahead and hit that goal and adjust the parameters a little to hit that goal, I would say, yeah, making $10,000 in 30-day period would be equivalent to say, yeah, I made 10K a month in my business. So we're gonna tamper and modify the parameters slightly, but since I'm being open about it, um, which most people online aren't anyway, I think personally, at least, I'm okay with that. So we are heavily on pace for a 10K month. So, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for the business? Um, yeah, well, I guess we'll start with those two. So, what does that mean for me? For me, this is like, and I don't want to like get into it too early or celebrate too soon. This is something that's been 2 years in the making, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I've had similar weeks like this at similar time periods, and it's a lot different than just saying I'm gonna do this 4 weeks in a row or 5 weeks in a row. Some of it is just pure luck, okay? But like any problem or any time we experience some success, we're gonna pour some gas on it. So that's what we're gonna spend the rest of this week doing is not trying to change anything, but building a little bit of infrastructure and systems to support what we're currently doing. That way we don't get burnt out, and that way it's something that we can sustainably do for the next 4 to 5 weeks guaranteed, and then continually 2 to 3 months, at the bare minimum. So that's kind of the forefront of business right now. I don't consider this video to be really flashy by any means, and I'm glad we're kind of getting back to just very objectable, plain English and communication about what is going on. Not to say that trying to make uh, entertaining content or more lifestyle content isn't my goal long term, or isn't something that I want to do, but the whole goal of this kind of road to success um, is to put myself in a position where I can do that a lot more comfortably. And it's it's kind of insane how quickly your mindset can change from a little bit of either success or opportunity, because there's a lot you have there's some freedom to that. So yeah, so I mean, just going over kind of the big goal of just creating a successful business while maintaining a healthy physique. That's something I fundamentally believe says a lot about a man. And you could play this kind of Togi or Dan Bilzerian um, script and flip it. Um, Obviously, that's throwing in a little bit of women and a little more degenerative concepts. But ultimately, I think what makes them so attractive on social media is, and I had a good conversation with a buddy of mine about this, is there is something masculine and true about being wealthy and having you know a successful body as a male. That is kind of the pinnacle of success from a worldly and a spiritual view. Now, I would say the difference is worldly puts it as is twisted, right? Something that originally was true and says this is what you need to achieve, this is what defines you, and you need to get there any way possible, right? That's the perverted truth. The truth is these are some of the byproducts of the discipline you endure as a man. And I think in some of the recent videos and some of the videos I haven't posted because they haven't really meshed well with the theme of Road to Success, is I'm starting to lean more too much towards this. And I think that's important because to talk about, because the devil doesn't come in horns and a pitchfork, he comes in everything you want, right? And I'm so quick to put that above, a relationship with God and doing it the correct way, that is instantly where my mind goes. And I believe one of my recent videos even kind of talks about, like, look, I'm just going to keep this simple. I'm going to get jacked and I'm going to get rich. And while I do, it does boil down to that, like I said, as a man working towards those byproducts, you're actually practicing a lot of godly behavior, most likely. Again, those aren't the end goal, they're the byproducts of being a godly man. So, and not to say like there aren't godly men that aren't jacked and rich. I don't want that to be my message. I don't want it to be like that's how you define someone, and that's not required whatsoever. But that's kind of what I think my purpose on this earth is to represent that divine masculine male, and God will show me as I get older what that looks like more and more uh, through God, and what that'll look like. So that's the goal as we get closer to our end goal, because we are reaching the end, and What I like about this approach, which I didn't have at the beginning of the year, because I've had similar goals since I was, 16. They just kind of changed, but it's a very broad kind of representation of like this is how I've broken down how I can help others. Um, with these tools and these kind of um, just areas of life that I've focused on. Like I said, that's not how it's going to be for everybody. Uh, Especially women, like do have like a whole different um, meaning of life and purpose of life that doesn't pertain exactly to those two. If I were to speculate on it, and I'm not saying this is true, this is just like to kind of answer that question. Yeah, I think a healthy body and like a resourceful mind, if you kind of translated it, is the same thing. It's a little different though, just because I mean you can tell by the way I'm talking, the way all my videos have been. Most women probably wouldn't even, and I'm not saying this in like a they wouldn't understand it. It's that like the same way when they talk in their divine feminine form, they're probably more accessible and more communicative with other women. So it's just, and I don't want to get too like broy or just kind of like this. I mean, this channel is for men, for other guys, uh, and then perhaps for women to see a perspective of men. Like that's fine. Maybe this becomes an all woman channel. I don't care, right? Probably won't, but that's not my point. It's just to kind of get back on topic. This is where I kind of see myself going. So yeah, I mean, kind of wrapped up the main talking point I wanted to get over, get through. Other than that, I'm gonna try to stick a little closer with you guys through November and kind of keep y'all updated. So we can kind of just call this like check the first checkpoint, and we'll try to do perhaps a video every 3 days or so. I think that'll give me a good amount of content. Um, and catching up, I think every day there just really isn't enough because most of my days are so repetitive anyway that you would just see me talking to you guys um, in the same part of my day, experiencing the same struggles of the day, and then maybe seeing a solution, like I said, like every 3 days or so. So, yeah, we'll do that. Um, yeah, I think that kind of pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about. Um, Again, I guess the last thing is, you know, with Road to Success kind of being the ideal goal to just be set up for success in 2026. It's also kind of a goal to be in a point of like leveling up in a sense to where not that we're never going to go back to this point, but it's like creating a new normal. So, for instance, when I was a teenager, right? Like a good say, then we'll just use like summer for instance, like when you're not in school and stuff. Like a good productive day was maybe, you know, waking up at 10 and maybe eating healthy this much of the time. Also, granted, it was a little different because you could like just given the sports and given the metabolism, you really didn't have to operate at 100%. Which is this is a good point I want to bring up. The reason I'm so health conscious isn't about like how I look necessarily now. It's pretty easy. It was fucking damn sure easy to be fucking shredded at 16 and 17 The con was like you're not going to put on a lot of muscle mass, but again, you're 16 or 17. Like your ideal muscle mass isn't that crazy. Um, God, my hair looks whack, but given and then once you're 19, 20, you're still in that pretty peak physique state. You're able to do. I was able to do a lot of unhealthy things while staying there. At 23, 24, um, it changes a little, just a little, nothing crazy. You're just not as your work increases and as sedentary work kind of it's either two options. One, you go to the sedentary work life to where you're actually sitting down a lot and you aren't burning a lot of calories. So you just don't need to eat more than 2,000 calories, like most of the time. That's a generalized statement. Two is you work a very physically intense job, and most of the time it's emotionally heavy. It's a it takes a toll on your body and your mental to where you usually cope with some sort of consumption of something that isn't good for your body. And I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but it's true for a lot of people. I hate to say it, and that's actually what's like driven me away from like long term blue collar work because I enjoy that stuff, but there are some repercussions to it to your body, 100% that cannot be denied. So so circling back to the main point, I do this now so that it's natural when I am 40 to be in pretty fucking good shape for a 40-year-old because I'm pretty comfortable with my body right now as a 24-year-old. It'd be cooler to be shredded a little more, and that's the goal, right? But yeah, like we got to build these habits. Like when I was 20 and finally got my own apartment after being in the barracks of the military and still being on like a kind of limited um, ability to like consume what I want. Like I sucked at meal prep. I tried it for like 2 weeks, and then I had to like the stuff I ideally wanted to do. I had to replaced with something simpler because I wasn't at that skill level yet. So, I mean, ideally, the goal is right. You use time, money, or energy to get the things you want. And I mean, as you get older, right, you have more time, you have more money, maybe more time. Definitely at the bare minimum, usually tend to have more money as you get older. But you're solving these same problems, but you want them to just be efficient. You want to already be efficient at these things you're doing because your body becomes less efficient, and that's kind of the big thing I'm trying to hit here. And everyone says like build those habits up in your 20s because most people are having to do them in their 30s. When you already did them in your 20s, it's basically a fuck you because like you already did it. And I think that's the problem is so many people spend their 20s working on the wrong skills. Like I think it's so obvious. But that's probably what someone says to me right now as I'm, sitting filming this video, um, working out all the time, um, focused on the wrong things potentially. But okay, that kind of wraps up everything. Um, yeah, like I said, trying to get to that new level of normal because that new level of normal is just going to be easier than, you know, the 16-year-old version that ate like shit and woke up at 10 and consumed this much amount of entertainment and was able to handle this much productivity and growth and thinking in a given day. Whereas like now, I'm still at a point where I'd say, if I do this for the next 20 years, I'm going to have a fine life and it'll be easy. I don't want to say easy. No one has an easy life, but it'll be comparatively easy. And that's not what I want. Um, if you think of a person with these, special abilities that not everyone would go through, do you think they got them by going through what everyone went through? No, they got them from doing the things that other people wouldn't go through. And that is the theme of Road to Success. And it may not be originally what you expected it to look like or intended it to look like, but that's not the point. We're trying to get to the end of the road. So, yeah, I think that's a great point to end on. Um, Hope this kind of is a good checkpoint from where we're at. You know, by August, September. Now that we're kind of 4 out of 6 months out of the way, we this is 2/3 of the way through, and I think, given the timeline I gave myself and the goals I wanted to reach, it's kind of funny how, um, of course, give yourself a realistic timeline, because that's what's going to make it a little more achievable. I think 6 months is a good time to build out a decent amount of success. My problem in the past, right, is just trying to do things a little too quick and burn out, burn out, burn out. So you get here, but then you burn out here, and then you burn out and you burn out. And I think this kind of slower just growth that I'm finally starting to mature into is what's going to get me there. And it's ironic a little because once you just give yourself a little bit of breathing room and a reasonable timeline, you kind of hit it perfectly to the point you're like, well, what if it makes you second guess yourself? Well, what if I just gave myself 3 months? And you can't do that. You just have to trust in God. So, very last thing I want to say for the people who kept it to the end, because these are the real people I'm talking to. Um, this isn't to say I don't have problems. This isn't to say I'm not going through hardships and struggles. This isn't to say everything in my life is perfect. While I will admit this time period of my life has been a lot easier to adjust to, I can only give that to God and because of the past experiences I've had. And I expect to continue doing that as long as I continue to keep God in my life and continuing to battle the hardships with Him. There will be harder times in my life that might actually be, with the things I currently have, that I'm trying to reach. And so that's not to say life's just going to be perfect. Okay, that's not what I'm getting at. It's to say I've gotten this far as a proof to whatever happens to me, I can, you know, reach this because you have the proof now. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'll update you guys. We'll do another video either Thursday or, maybe Friday, just 3 days from now. And yeah, uh, peace.